Peace, peace, peace. Yeah, I got to show the ball here. Peace, peace, peace. I am Phillip Roundtree, and you are tuned into the June 16th edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Props to those who are watching on Facebook Live. Shouts to those who are watching on YouTube Live. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Yeah, so I can hopefully at some point in the next 30 to 40 years monetize off YouTube. And props to the people who are watching on IG Live. Listen, I started a little late at 7:09. You want me to lie, or I'll give you the real reason. The real reason is because Fox Sports 1 is playing Survivor Series from 1996, WWF, before they changed their name to WWE. So this like old school wrestling. So my homie told me about it earlier. Shout out to Justin Foster and his new twins. Like, you 36 with twins. I feel like it's a blessing. It's a blessing. But I know like he gonna end up like me soon. So we're gonna get this started so I can get back to watching that. Listen, man, we're gonna have a real conversation about what's been taking place recently, in particular to the black hangings that have been on full display, right? Been getting a lot of media attention within the last several weeks, and we know why that is because we're highlighting all things all things black. I take that back. We're not highlighting all things black. We're highlighting all things that are cis hetero black male. We're not necessarily highlighting what's happening to our trans brothers and sisters. We're not necessarily highlighting what's happening to our black women. It fits that bill, right? It fits that bill. That's why we're truly having a conversation on black hangings, because it is happening to black men. And so for those who have been under a rock, there has come to light. I'm just trying to pull up this information. So within the last like 3 or 4 weeks or so, there's been several high profile cases when it's come to hanging. In particular, there were two that took place in San Bernardino County in California and LA County. So in San Bernardino County, it was Malcolm Harsh. He was found hanging near the Victorville City Library. It wasn't the fact that he was found hanging, but he was found hanging on a tree. Same thing that happened with Robert Fuller. He was found hanging from a tree. Fast forward a little bit to June 9th, Dominique Alexander, New York, was found hanging from a tree. Now, typically, and if we could be honest about it, if we could keep it real, typically this wouldn't get any publicity. We know that suicide, especially suicide amongst black folk, doesn't get publicity like this. Shout out to the late, I believe her name was Jazz Waters, who died by suicide within the last week or so. She was a writer on, yes, Jazz Waters. She was a writer on This Is Us, that NBC show that I still don't understand why y'all watch, because I never cry from it. But listen, every time I see somebody, they be like, oh my gosh, I was crying, I watched it. And so, shout out to her, who, again, we continue to lose people due to by suicide, which we know is a direct result of depression, anxiety, and a host of other potentially traumatic experiences that influence where we are in that moment in time. And so when we talk about just the recent highlighting of black male suicides by hanging from a tree, a lot of conspiracy theories have begun to pop up, right? Because we see what happened to George Floyd. We know that black folk, especially black men, and I hate saying that, especially black men, because again, this impacts everybody. But we see a lot of these deaths downright suspicious. And so I understand that. And then when we add the fact that a black man is hanging from a tree, we know what that signifies to the black community. We know that is something that really strikes a chord. I talked about how it piques our ancestral antenna. Like they're come popping up. Like, whoa, black folk are not going to hang themselves from trees, because we know for centuries that's been the method of death by murder from white folk. And so I understand that. I empathize with that. And so I'm completely for people advocating for a deeper dive into these deaths. But we need to recognize that suicides, especially when we talk about men, it's usually by lethal means. And so the most lethal means are indeed hangings and dying by firearms. Now, even though women attempt suicide more, which is usually the result of some type of pharmaceutical, by pharmaceutical means, so we're talking about popping pills or some type of asphyxiation or what have you, we know that men are more successful because, again, they're using more lethal means, hanging, firearms. I understand that the black rage, and we start to question everything. That uncertainty that exists, especially when it comes to coroners. We saw in the George Floyd case that the family had to go get an independent coroner who said, oh no, he was asphyxiated because someone was kneeing on his neck, his back, his legs. Because the initial coroner just ruled it as, hey, it's just a death. It wasn't a homicide. We know that there's a certain mistrust that exists because these are government officials. Coroners are government officials. And so it makes sense for the family of Malcolm Harsh to say, oh, nah, not at all. Especially when we look at the areas where these have taken place. In San Bernardino County and LA County, which are where white folk habitat. Now, in the part where I start to question the reasoning behind their desire for a more intense investigation, is that the family of Malcolm Harsh says he didn't appear depressed and he had recent talks with his kids about seeing them soon. Tell you a quick story. So when I used to be a crisis social worker in a psych unit, I had a gentleman come in. He was in his late 20s. He came in with a broken arm. His mother wanted him evaluated because she just had concerns. She knew that he experienced some recent crises in his life. The motorcycle accident, which caused him to break his arm, and his girlfriend broke up with him within the last 2 weeks. And so that concern that we might think about is saying, you know what, is it really that serious? A broken arm, your arm will heal. You'll find another girlfriend. But she was concerned enough to have him come for an evaluation. And the doctor kept him. So that meant he's had to spend at least 3 days on our psychiatric unit. And so, I took him over there. Then I ended up seeing him a few days later. And he said, you know what? I needed this break. I'm glad I'm here. Fast forward another few days, I get a call from my coworker who says that he shot himself. He died by suicide. So here we have somebody within the last few days who said, you know what, they felt good. They were at peace, which can be a sign. Right? But yet, a week later, he kills himself. I bring that up because, listen, it's very plausible that he didn't appear depressed. It's very plausible that he talked with his kids about seeing them soon. But all it takes is a moment. All it takes is a moment of psychological crises. And not even necessarily psychological crises. What I say about suicide for people is that a lot of them just desire something greater for themselves that they can't necessarily find here on earth. Even though I believe that they can potentially find that peace that they're looking for, that relief that they're looking for while still alive. And so when we talk about the stigma of mental health in the black community, which we're finally starting to have conversations about, yes, we're talking about depression and anxiety. We're talking about PTSD with the cop killings and growing up and seeing trauma often. But we aren't necessarily talking about suicide. That's still that hush hush. And so I think part of that stigma is driving this disbelief that Malcolm Harsh, Robert Fuller, and potentially Dominique Alexander didn't necessarily die by suicide. For many of us, it's easier to digest if we knew that it was by the hands of somebody else. I say this all the time about my brother, God bless the dead. He died from opioid use way before it was in vogue. And we know why it's in vogue, because white people started dying from it. And so he died from it in 2001. And I used to tell people that he got shot. Why? Because it took the onus off of him. It was easier for me to digest. It was easier for me to cope with. That took away some of the pain. And so I completely understand why these families have more questions and don't want to believe that it's suicide. And my thing is, hey, if you don't believe it, advocate. Advocate, advocate, advocate. Make them show you all the proof that it is a suicide and not a homicide. Because for real, they should be investigating it as such. Especially when there's nobody around, in my humble opinion. And so again, we go to this mistrust of systems that continue to exist out here in these streets. I don't know what will make these families feel better. They can't. They lost someone that they love. There's no way. But hopefully, and I say hopefully, they receive the answers that they're looking for. And hopefully it's truth. Right? Hopefully it's truth, and they learn how to cope with the loss of their loved ones. But again, when we talk about the stigma is big, because I've seen so many people posting about these hangings from trees being suspicious. And again, historically, I understand why. But if you can't even bring your thoughts to fathom that it could potentially have been suicide, then that right there is stigma. And just like that, we threw the first topic, right? Because I do want to get to the Survivor Series. So the next thing we're going to be discussing is this whole thing with Lecrae. So if you're not familiar with Lecrae, Lecrae is a Christian rapper, right? He's one of the Christian rappers who I can tolerate because, again, it's not super preachy. It's relatable, and that's why he has such the following that he has. He has, both the believer, and he has the worldly person. But whenever this conversation took place, and it was him, it was this Gilio guy, and it was Kathy, who is the owner of Chick-fil-A. I have no idea why you folk continue to patronize Chick-fil-A. And I'm gonna keep it real. I don't go to Chick-fil-A, but people might buy me Chick-fil-A and bring it to me, and I may or may not eat it. Not because it's good, but because it's free and I'm not paying for it. You dig me? But the owner of Chick-fil-A, the CEO of Chick-fil-A, has shown what they're about time and time and time and time and time and time again. They're a Trump supporter. They don't believe in equal rights for LGBTQ plus folk. And they speak out against it. They donate money to traditional marriage funds and what have you. So they've let you know their position. When people show you who they are, you should believe them. And that's why I say, for real, on this continuum of blackness, on this humanity continuum, nobody all the way on the super blackety black realm. You know what I'm saying? Nobody is in that super blackety black realm. Make sure that's him right. Because again, if you really about that life, if you really about Black Lives Matter, there's no way in hell you would patronize Chick-fil-A. Unless you only support heterosexual black folk, if that's what you're saying. Then again, on that continuum of blackness, you not all the way there yet. We still got some growing to do. You know what I'm saying? We still got some growing to do. And so I'm going to play these clips, and I didn't hear the clips for myself yet, so I'm going to be listening to them as well. I listened to one of them, and that's why I brought it here, but the rest of them, like Lecrae's response. So apparently they were speaking with Giglio, and he's the head of a mega church in Atlanta, in Georgia, and I'm just going to play it for y'all. And I hope y'all can hear it, because I don't even know if I got my thing up.
We love the blessing of the cross, but we don't love to sit in it and realize this is what God's asking me to do, to die to myself and to live for him, whatever context that's going to look like for me. But I want to flip that upside down, because I think the other side of it is true with our nation's history. We understand the curse that was slavery, white people do, and we say that was bad. But we miss the blessing of slavery, that it actually built up the framework for the world that white people live in and lived in. And so a lot of people call this white privilege, and when you say those two words, it just is like a fuse goes off for a lot of white people, because they don't want somebody telling them to check their privilege. And so I know that you and I both have struggled in these days with, hey, if the phrase is the trip up, let's get over the phrase and let's get down to the heart.
Sure.
Let's get down to what then do you want to call it? And I think maybe a great thing for me is to call it white blessing, that I'm living in the blessing of the curse that happened generationally that allowed me to grow up in Atlanta. And, you know, you're talking about
Bruh. Like, slavery was a blessing. Slavery was a blessing. And it shouldn't be white privilege. It should be white blessing. And so on this episode of White Folks Say the Damnedest Things, we got them up. And so I just laugh now. I laugh when these, especially the religious zealots, because y'all know how I feel about organized religion. Y'all know how I feel about Christianity. That it has been used to oppress black folk. Not only black folk. But when these missionaries go to these different countries trying to interrupt the way of life of people to save their souls. We're talking about power. We're talking about power. And so we even see that today when we have people saying calling for peaceful protest, and when we see people praying over the officers. And I'm just sitting here like, yo, wake up. Think about how Christianity was used. And think about how Christianity was used to make the black person, the African, docile. To make them comply. And yes, we've adopted it. And people still use it. And I don't begrudge anybody, because I can't tell you how to think about your afterlife. We all need some type of moral compass to help us navigate life. I'm not against that at all. I always quote the line from Menace to Society: if Allah can make Sharif a better man, I'm all for it. Whatever makes you feel good and not necessarily harm me. But Karl Marx also said that religion is the opium of the masses. And so it makes you docile like Lecrae was. You might not necessarily be as quick to speak out and say, yo, what the are you talking about? But I'm going to play Lecrae's response for you.
Appreciate y'all acknowledging the pain and the frustration that you had with what was said. It's helped me process a lot as well. First of all, I want you to know I wasn't okay with it. Even as I sat there, I was very uncomfortable, and I was processing on like, man, what do I say in light of this? There's been a lot of times where as I've navigated white supremacy or racial injustice, where I've just been trying to figure out where I wanted to lash out, honestly, in anger. And there's other moments where I've been like, all right, God, give me the grace and the wisdom on how to deal with this. And in that moment, I was processing like, man, what do I do? I ended up having a conversation with him subsequently, right after we talked. And then I talked to him again last night and let him know my views and my perspectives. And obviously I wasn't okay with it. And we can't just be virtue signaling and doing this because it's the end thing to do, to talk about race on platforms. And I didn't have any ulterior motives other than to help and articulate, some of what's going on in our world and in our culture. So I just want to thank y'all, especially my black sisters who have been on the front lines.
So he hit y'all with a, yo, my bad. That's all I heard in that, yo, my bad. I should have said something. I should have spoken up. Again, we want to extend that grace to them. But again, these are moments. These are missed opportunities. And I guess I'm trying to understand where he might be coming from as to why he froze in that moment. But what he's telling you to your face is slavery wasn't bad. There's no such thing as white privilege. That's what he's telling you to your face, Lecrae. Yeah, when we get, I know he tried to parse words and say, well, it's a rough time, but he's trying to justify it. He's trying to look for the silver lining in slavery. He's trying to look for the silver lining and not necessarily white privilege, but it's a blessing. And what happened, it's a missed opportunity to tell this white man about himself. That white privilege that was on full display right there. Or maybe I shouldn't even be looking at Lecrae to be the one to have this conversation. Because subsequently, we don't know what took place during those conversations. Because we know why he sat there. He was like, he did chuckle. He's like, boss. You's right. He was complicit in that. His silence was him being complicit in that conversation. And so again, but what will happen is they'll try to use the connection of Christianity, right, to say we're all equal. Elaine Pickett says, I understand how someone can freeze up in a situation like that. I understand it too. But just know how you're going to get dragged by social media. Like he did. I wish I had the comments. Matter of fact, I'll look on my phone right now. Somebody said, when Kanye said slavery was a choice, I didn't think it could be topped. But Louis Giglio just looked Lecrae dead in his eyes and tried to explain to him that slavery was somehow a blessing. When y'all going to divest from y'all evangelicalism once and for all? Again, the blessing of slavery. You know what? I take that back. I don't understand how somebody can freeze in that moment. Not now. Not for everything that's been lost within these several weeks. And so I think we want to, how can I put this? I really think that him reacting, see, we equate anger with somehow a wrong emotion. We look at anger as being wrong. We look at anger as being something that we never should display. Christianity does an amazing job in saying don't be quick to anger. And so for somebody who follows this doctrine for as long as Lecrae has followed, he's had to adopt that mantra, be slow to anger, as if it's something wrong with that. So what he has to do is he has to put his blackness on hold, right? He can't be a black man. He said it. He was angry in that moment. But what would have happened if he would have lashed out at him? He would have been an angry black man. I'm gonna play the comments again.
We love the blessing of the cross, but we don't love to sit in it and realize this is what God's asking me to do, to die to myself and to live for him, whatever context that's going to look like for me. But I want to flip that upside down, because I think the other side of it is true with our nation's history. We understand the curse that was slavery, white people do, and we say that was bad, but we miss the blessing of slavery, that it actually built up the framework for the world that white people live in and lived in. And so a lot of people call this white privilege, and when you say those two words, it just is like a fuse goes off for a lot of white people, because they don't want somebody telling them to check their privilege. And so I know that you and I both have struggled in these days with, hey, if the phrase is the trip up, let's get over the phrase and let's get down to the heart.
Sure.
Let's get down to what then do you want to call it. And I think maybe a great thing for me is to call it white blessing, that I'm living in the blessing of the curse that happened generationally that allowed me to grow up in Atlanta. And, you know, you're talking about.
He doesn't even respect him as a black man. He doesn't respect him as a black man. Because that's what that is. That's clear disrespect. Again, privilege on display. Mr. Lane says, well, you're the only black and all these white people are surrounding you and they surprise you with the racism. If you're not quick on your feet, you freeze up. The fact of the matter is he shouldn't have put himself in that situation then. He shouldn't have put himself in this situation to have a conversation about race if he's not prepared to excoriate somebody like Giglio for saying that slavery is a blessing. You shouldn't put yourself in situations like that. No, I have no idea how old he is. He's in his early 30s. But again, this isn't about age. This is about how this is about how we're nurtured in the church, right? How the church nurtures black folk, and how we're forced to put our blackness to the side. How we're supposed to see the good in folk. What good can I see in anybody if you're telling me to my face as a black man that slavery is a choice? Slavery is a choice. Slavery is a blessing. That's not even about slavery being a choice. And so I can't shoot Lecrae bail, because these are the moments. Maybe I'm past teaching white folk. I'm past that point of teaching white folk how not to be white folk. Either you're going to be an ally on probation or you're not an ally. Like, we talk about these uncomfortable conversations. Nah, we're past having these uncomfortable conversations. I wish I had the James Baldwin quotes. Like how much time do you want for your progress? How much time do I have to continue to sit down with these white folk and try to explain them the black experience? How much time do you want for your progress? It took my granddaddy time, my grandmama time, my parents' time. It's taking my time. How much time do you want? How many times do we have to continue to sit with folk like this? There's no way I'm going to sit with somebody like Kathy whose beliefs are easily Googleable. They haven't made up in their mind how they're feeling. Right? They haven't made up in their mind how they're feeling. Did I have these very strong feelings 15 years ago? For sure I did. That's why I'm a full-time entrepreneur. Because I'm the same person at 22, 23 years of age who sat in front of Mayor Nutter and cut him off in front of his speech. And pretty much told him he don't care about black people, but put social workers in there. Again, I understand what we're talking about. We're talking about exposure, right? We're talking about awareness of blackness. But at some point, when do we call people to the carpet and say, yo, this is what it is? When do we hold him accountable for what it is? Yes, we can show grace, but people need to drag him and say, you look like a clown up there. By letting this man tell you that slavery is a blessing, that it's not white privilege, that it's a white blessing. You're sitting here trying to have conversations with folk. You're sitting here trying to have conversation with folk. Again, we talk about people need more time. How much time? You can't say you want time and then you want to sit and have these conversations with the people and be on these platforms and have this platform. You need to play the background. That's why as much hate as Michael Jordan got for not speaking up on behalf of the black governor back in the late 80s, early 90s, and he'd rather donate money. Michael Jordan knew his lane. We're just now starting to see Michael Jordan speak up on black issues. But Mike has always donated money. Why? Because Mike knew his lane. And so again, maybe this shows Lecrae that he thinks he's ready for these type of position, but he's not. Not yet. My mother says he felt comfortable in saying that to this young man. I wish he could have quoted scripture that indicates slavery is not considered a blessing. It's in the Bible, let my people go. Again, I'm even past that. This ain't about quoting scripture for scripture. Part of me, again, a strong part of me thinks that Christianity, I'm not in here to turn this into a religious show. that Christianity might not necessarily promote anti-blackness, but it doesn't endorse it. Not the way that we've interpreted it. It's been weaponized, right? It's been weaponized to the point where he has to think about, is it angry? Am I responding out of anger to this white man who told me to my face that slavery is a blessing? I don't know. And so you say Jordan has been canceled. How can you cancel Jordan? That's it's such irony in these conversations. Like, how first, black folk can't afford to cancel other black folk. We just don't have that luxury. We just don't have that luxury. That same grace that's being extended to Lecrae should be extended to Michael Jordan too, right? Because at least Mike knew his lane. Mike knew to give money. I'm not speaking out on black issues. No, I'm going to go build these hospitals. I'm going to go buy the Charlotte Bobcats and turn them into the Charlotte Hornets. And I'm going to have black folk all up in my business. See, I think that's one of the issues. We want visible black folk. And I had to come around on Michael Jordan. Because we have to recognize that everybody's protest is different. I can't tell you why we can't cancel black people. Black people we don't have the luxury to cancel people just because we don't agree with what they might say or their actions that aren't criminal. Now, if it was Bill Cosby, if it's R. Kelly who are legit criminals, sexual predators, I'm all for that. But I can't cancel somebody just because they choose to protest in a different way. They choose to respond, so they're not making an ad for a black governor who's going against racism, but he gives money to his fund. And so people might have been listening yesterday where I talked about how with celebrities, how I talked about Don Lemon calling out celebrities. Where are they to speak out on these black issues? And I didn't have an issue with that, because if you're in the limelight talking about everything else, right? If you're in the limelight talking about everything else, but it comes to black issues and you kind of silent, then yeah, I'm going to look at you kind of funny. He says Candace Owens. Candace is a unique situation. Candace is a unique situation. No, I don't think we could cancel Candace Owens. But we could look at Candace Owens like, yo, you super nasty. She don't necessarily got to get invited to the cookout. Candace Owens can be put on punishment. Again, why? Because Jordan has $500 million. He's a billionaire. Nah. I'd rather him give his money. I'd rather him know his lane and stay in it. But with Candace Owens, yes, she's speaking out against black folk. That's her platform. She's found a niche to make money. Is it extremely nasty? For sure. But can she still be redeemed at some point? I think so. Now, again, individual people can cancel people, right? If that's what you want to do, and I'll make an argument reasoning as to why. Well, if you cancel people because they got money, that's more of a you issue than a him issue. You know what I'm saying? Like, as much as I dislike Jay-Z, billionaire Jay-Z, I can't cancel him. As much as I dislike Jay-Z for partnering with the NFL, when people show you who they are, you should believe them. When Jay-Z is just like Lecrae. It's just like you going up in these situations thinking you're going to change racist white folk. It's just like, come on, brother. Your time, your resources, your energy could be better used elsewhere. But I can't cancel them. Just like Candace Owens. She could be on a lengthy time out forever. But she can still have that come to God moment. For me. Again, that's not everybody's calling. It's not. And he's been consistent when we talk about Michael Jordan. He's been consistent throughout his life. And now he's having these conversations like out in the public. But when you ask people who truly know him, Mike been donating money for years. Right? Mike has been donating money to various causes. Again, he got a black business. A black-owned business, and he hires black folk all up and down, not just in the concession stands, not just the basketball players. So no, Mike good in my book, right? Because again, everybody's protest is different. Everybody can't go out and speak at rallies. We need people behind the scenes too, right? We need to be able to do both. We need to be able to do both. And so getting into our last conversation, and you know, it's one of those news days that's really like slow. This brother, and he not canceled, even though he's going to be the next Bachelor. So this brother, Matt James, is going to be the first black Bachelor in the show's 18 years. It's 25th season. And it might kind of be, I'm kind of messed up for putting black-ish Bachelor. Because you know how we do. I feel like I need a little bit more information about who he is. Now, he's black, right? He's black. He could get killed outside just like everybody else, right? No matter if he went to Wake Forest University on a football scholarship and played in the NFL briefly. No matter if he has a degree in economics and works in commercial real estate in New York. He's still a nigga that could get murdered by the police. He could still have the Amy Coopers of the world call the police on him and say, yo, he's threatening me. And so I'm not mad at him. This is an opportunity for him to build his brand, whatever that might look like. My thing is, we see through you, ABC. We know who you are. You're just like NASCAR. This is the equivalent of taking down the Confederate flag. You trying to appease black folk. You trying to show black folk, yo, we on your side. Because I told you, we in the times of pick a side. You either over here or you over here. And so it's like, you know what? Let's show black folk like we down. We down. I know we got blackish. I know we got grownish. But let's truly show that we about that change. We about that action, boss. In the words of Marshawn Lynch. And so they announced Matt James as the Bachelor for this upcoming season. Again, the first black Bachelor in the show's 18 years. It's 25th season. What was happening 18 years ago? 18 years ago was 2002. So we're talking about we're still right after 9/11. We're 1 year after 9/11. It's been 19 years since 9/11. Bill Cosby not our favorite old head anymore. R. Kelly is canceled. There's no more TGIF Fridays. I'm talking about the time slot on ABC, not the restaurant. And so they decide to hit us with this. Like it's the perfect time to roll out the Negro. Roll out the token Negro. And they asked him about this, and he's like, listen, man, it's no perfect time. Which I can agree to. But my question is, see, now you got a Negro on here now. My first thought was, what's these contestants going to look like? Like, what these contestants gonna look like? Now, is it gonna be like 25 sisters? Is it gonna be 25 sisters on here? Or is this gonna be like him and 25 white girls? Are they gonna do half and half? Is it gonna be a mixed-ish show for this Blackish Bachelor? Like, I'm curious. Now, I know a lot of white women watch this, and I know a lot of men watch it with their significant others. This might be a reason for them to be out. This might be a reason for them white men. Yeah, listen, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm cool or on all of this. I don't need to see this brother. And so, again, it's like this validation. And that's another thing that I started thinking about outside of the demographics of the people that's going to be participating. It's just like, yo, we couldn't have this on BET for what it's worth. We know VH1 is the new Negro station. Like, why do we care about The Bachelor having their first black person on there? We shouldn't give a damn. But again, it goes to that white validation that we continue to seek. We want to thrive in their spaces to show that we a part, that we made it. Like when I was looking up information on them on one of the websites, under his picture it said, well educated with a job to match. Okay. In all caps though, well educated with a job to match. So he's worthy of being on The Bachelor. Right? He's worthy. Even though he fits the profile of everybody else they didn't have on there, all them other white folk. Ex-athletes. Race car drivers. And so salute to the sister who was on there. And her name, if I could find the name where I could find it. But she was like, yo, stop coming to me with this, man. Lindsay. Her last name is Lindsay. Let me see. Yeah, outside the white girl who was rapping the N-word or something on her social media. But I want to give her whole name because salute to her. She like, yo, stop with the bullshit. You know what I mean? Stop with the BS. Rachel Lindsay. And I don't know who she ended up with. I feel comfortable in saying she might have picked a white man. But I applaud her for saying that, yo, this is egregious. Stop coming to me for your quotes because I'm that token black person. I was the only black female on there. Like, stop. We're talking about ABC. This is on them. Go to quotes and get comments from them as to why it's taken 25 seasons for some form of representation to take place on this white-ass show. Black folk not going to watch The Bachelor. I never hear anybody talk about why. I hear black folk talking about they got to get to watch The Bachelor. Unfortunately, I hear Real Housewives of Atlanta or whatever it is. I just heard Eva not coming back. So does that mean Phaedra coming back? Unfortunately, I know this stuff because I keep my ear to the streets. But we're not talking about The Bachelor. We're not talking about The Bachelorette because that's not for us. And so if we keep trying to get into their spaces to gain their approval and can't, and again, I guess the word of the week is imagine something different for us on these black ass stations that's about to be on Comcast from Byron Allen. Because Comcast surrendered and said, all right, we're going to put some of your stations on. Maybe if we could get a dating show from Tyler Perry. I know y'all hate Tyler, but Tyler the man. Tyler got that bread. We don't have to worry about being included in their situations. Because again, be careful of that validation y'all seek. You know what I'm saying? Affirmative action. Again, that's exactly what it is. We talking about affirmative action. Right? Affirmative action that we don't really care about. I didn't see not nan post or tweet about the Bachelor being black. Or if I did, it was just like, yo, we laughing about it in this regards. Omar said, I would love to have them been around for this decision and discussion. Let's get a Negro. Listen, and the beautiful thing is, this could fly under the radar because that white pastor came out and started talking about slavery as a blessing. So, hey, I ain't got nothing else for you. So I'm gonna give y'all this Baldwin before I get up out here. We're gonna be back tomorrow, so tune in. This ain't Baldwin. This is Umar. I feel that way too. Feel free to donate to Quantify LLC, but I'm gonna give you some Baldwin.
The reason that black people are in the streets has to do with the lives they're forced to lead in this country. And they're forced to lead these lives by the indifference and the apathy and a certain kind of ignorance, a very willful ignorance on the part of their co-citizens. Everybody knows, no matter what they do not know, that they wouldn't like to be a black man in this country. They know that, and they shut their minds against the rest of it, all the implications of being a black father, or a black woman, or a black son, and all of the implications involved in a human being's endeavor to take care of his wife, to take care of his children, to raise his children to be men and women in the teeth of a structure which is built to deny that I can be a human being, or that my child can be. The great question in the country has been, all the years that I've been living here, and I was born here 43 years ago, is what does a Negro want? And this question masks a terrible knowledge. I want exactly what you want. And you know what you want. I want to be left alone. I don't want any of the things that people accuse Negroes of wanting. And I don't hate you. I simply want to be able to raise my children in peace and arrive at my own maturity in my own way, in peace. I don't want to be defined by you. I think that you and I might learn a great deal from each other if you can overcome the curtain of my color. The curtain of my color is what you use to avoid facing the facts of our common history, the facts of American life. It is easy to call me a Negro or a nigger or a promising black man, but in fact, I'm a man like you. I want to live like you. This country is mine too. I paid as much for it as you. White means that you are European still, and black means that I'm African. And we both know, we've both been here too long, You can't go back to Ireland or Poland or England, and I can't go back to Africa. And we will live here together, or we'll die here together. And it's not I am telling you. Time is telling you. You will listen or you will perish.
Again, catch y'all tomorrow. Same time, 7 p.m. Peace.